Hello guys, in this video we're going to have a look at the best builds you can make in Windrose. First, let's analyze each weapon's strengths, and then we will move on to specific builds you can go for. So, to begin with, the major difference between weapons right now is that some weapons are able to perfect block, the known parry mechanic from other games, while others not. Perfect block will allow you to deflect enemy attacks without any drawback. Also, each time you perfect block, you deplete one of your enemy's shields, and once you have depleted all of them, the target will be stunned for a few seconds. If you do a regular block, you might mitigate the full damage from your enemy's strike, but you will lose one posture point yourself, which you can see right here, and once you lose all of them, you will be staggered as well. Not to mention that the enemy doesn't lose posture points when you simply block them, which means you will never get a turn to hit them. The weapons that can parry attacks are the Sabre, the Rapier and the Greatsword, while the weapons that cannot parry attacks are the Mace and Halberd. This alone instantly put Mace and Halberd builds lower in the tier rankings, but at least the Halberd can find its use in AoE fights. More on that later. Now, the next way to determine if a build is strong or not is how much damage it actually do. To increase your DPS in Windrose, all you can do is to maximize your current weapon attribute to up to 50 points and then add critical strike chance in order to crit and multiply that damage. Mastery is the stat that gives you critical strike chance, but after 20 points it only gives you 0.3 per point, which means it's best if you just leave it at 20. So, attribute-wise, there is nothing else you can do to gain more damage other than investing your points into Mastery after you reach the main attribute's hard cap. And then comes the gear, equipment that might contribute to make an interesting build, though there are not many options here as well. The best armor for pure DPS will be the Privateer set, which gives you 10% critical strike chance, something very important since after the 20 points in Mastery there isn't much that we can do to increase our critical strike chance, and up to 30% critical strike damage when you have 3 enemies close at you. Critical damage bonuses are extremely important, and that's actually the reason why critical builds can deal much more DPS than other builds. We are able to acquire huge critical damage bonuses if we use the Cutthroat Ring, which gives us 30% more, and the Elixir of Concentration that gives us another 30%, reaching a total of 90% critical damage. And finally, the last thing that can shape our builds into strong or weak builds is the talents. And now with all that information, let's jump into the strongest builds you can actually hope for in Windrose. So first, let's eliminate the possibility of playing the Mace. Mace right now has a very slow and very bad moveset, making it very hard to hit enemies. There isn't a Mace that has some special power to make us think about it, and most importantly, we cannot perfect block with it, which means that we will have to dodge every single attack. Dodging while holding a mace isn't something that we are used to in video games. Usually we also carry a shield with a mace and play a tankish build, something that is not possible in Windrose. So mace will stay out of this whole video until it gets patched or until they add some kind of shield. And so we reach our first fun and very strong build to play. For this build we will showcase 2 weapons at once, the Stalwart Greatsword and the Dueling Greatsword. Both of them are very strong and they can be played the same way. The ultimate damage difference between these two is very small, so it's safe to choose either one of them. The Dueling Greatsword scales with A, while Stalwart scales with S, which means it will benefit more from our agility points. The Dueling Greatsword will also give you up to 30% bonus damage after parrying 3 consecutive attacks, but you lose those stacks if you take damage. When you have all 3 stacks, you will deal more damage than you can do with Stalwart, but like I said, the difference is very small. If you don't have these stacks, however, the Stalwart Greatsword will deal more damage with a critical hit since it has 30% critical damage boost. Let's not forget that the Dueling Greatsword also gives us a very nice passive that allows you to heal some HP when you perfect block after you're reaching max stacks. So for our attributes, our goal is to reach 40 points in agility to hit the mid cap. Right now this character is level 15, so I'm using Gazpacho to gain the massive 20 agility boost. Then we want 20 points in Mastery to reach the soft cap on critical strike chance. I'm using Coffee for the 20 points in Endurance, and finally I use the Necklace of Vitality for 15 more points plus the 5 remaining points for a total 20 Vitality. Remember that you don't have to use the exact items as I do, as long as you can achieve similar attributes. For example, you can use different necklace that will give you agility and then use seafood platter for vitality instead of gazpacho for agility. For your gear and ring, however, you specifically want to go for the Privateer armor since this is a critical build, and then the Jaguar ring for an extra 10% critical chance. The Jaguar ring is important because we can't raise our critical strike chance in many ways. Finally, for our talents, after some tests I came to the conclusion that it's best if you go for the upper 3 and get the bonus slash damage on the first stage, and then your real goal is to reach the deadly finale and max it out. On the way you can pick up both perfect counter and duelist. So with a critical Greatsword build you will enjoy great overall DPS, great moveset and weapon reach, and you will have the ability to perfect block. It is safe to say that the critical Greatsword is an S tier build for Windrose. Moving on, for the next top tier build we have a critical Rapier. This build will be very similar to the previous one, only we are going to use a few more weapons as utility options. Our main weapon will be the sturdy Rapier, similar to the stalwart Greatsword. It also scales perfectly with its core stat, and on its final form it also gives us 20% bonus critical damage. However, if you want to maximize your DPS and you don't mind swapping weapons during combat, you can also utilize the Rapier of 1000 Cats. Now, 1000 Cats deals a lot less damage with its regular attacks than the sturdy Rapier, but it applies a very nice bleeding effect on the target. This bleeding effect stacks up to 5 times, and all you have to do to maintain it is to land one more hit before it runs out. So the plan here is to apply these 5 bleeding stacks on your target with 1000 Cats and then swap to sturdy Rapier. If possible, when you are about to lose these 5 stacks, you can swap weapons for one hit with 1000 Cats to refresh the bleeding effect. For your first playthrough that might be unnecessary since the DPS from sturdy Rapier alone will be enough to deal with anything, but if you wish to replay the game with HP multipliers pumped up, maybe you will find this strategy useful. Lastly, since we are using a one-handed weapon, we are able to equip a pistol, and here we have 2 options. You can either go for the Drake's double-barrel pistol, which applies a vulnerability stack on the target, making it take 15% bonus damage. This is a very good utility option, especially if you play with friends, since they can all benefit from this damage buff. And the next option is the Plague Pistol, which will give you a surprising amount of health back every time you shoot an enemy. So with the Plague Pistol you can reduce the use of health potions while also dealing some extra damage. For the attributes we want to have the exact same setup as our previous build, only now instead of agility we want to have 40 points in precision. Again, it doesn't matter how you are going to reach these stats as long as you do. I am using the Vitality Necklace for 15 points in Vitality, the Swamp Pie for 20 Precision, and Coffee for 20 Endurance. The rest of the stats I cover them with my attribute points. Let me mention one more time that we want to stop at 20 points in Mastery, since any point above that will give us a very tiny amount of critical strike chance, making it pretty much not worth it. For our gear, once again we go with the Privateer armor set for extra critical strike chance and critical damage bonuses, and for our ring we have to go for the Jaguar ring once again for an extra 10% critical strike chance. Finally, on our talent tree we want to go for Deep Impact from the pistol tree, then we move on the upper tree for the surgical cuts, which will going to give us a bit more critical strike chance, and then you have 2 options, it is up to you. You can either go for Quick Strikes for 8% bonus damage or Perfect Counter, which will give you another 12% critical strike chance after perfect blocking 3 attacks. Finally, we want to reach Deadly Finale for a total 25% bonus damage after 5 attacks. Once again, with the critical Rapier you will have great speed, the very important ability to perfect block, and you will also be able to equip a pistol either to improve your DPS or gain some lifesteal. I wouldn't say that Rapier is great for AoE fights, but there will be times when you will hit multiple enemies with one attack, and that is exceptionally good if you are able to apply bleeding stacks with 1000 Cats. Moving on, I will show you a ranged build that you will enjoy even more if you mod the game in order to have unlimited bullets and gunpowder, but of course you can also try it on your normal gameplay. So for this ranged build we will have 2 different variations. The first one will be with the shotgun and the other one will be with the sniper. For the shotgun variation we want to play with the reliable blunderbuss. This weapon scales with agility, so we want to reach the hard cap for this one for 60 total agility for maximum damage. Unlike the regular critical builds, ranged weapons don't need critical strike chance since every headshot will always deal critical damage. So instead of putting points into mastery, you can maximize your core stat. Additionally, since we aren't going to need critical strike chance, we can also use the cutthroat ring, which will give us 30% bonus critical strike damage. As for our gear, we want to go for the marksman set for the 15% bonus range damage, and now the whole idea of this shotgun build is to get close to your opponent and blast their heads off. As you can see, its damage can reach ridiculous values and one-shot even the strongest opponents in the game. In order to make this work, we will need a specific talent tree. We want to go for Bullseye for 20% bonus damage when hitting critical spots, such as enemy heads, then Muscle Reach for another 20% bonus damage when we are close to our target, and then you can choose between Quick Hands or Firearm Training. Quick Hand will improve the reload speed, while Firearm Training can boost your overall damage. Finally, you want to spend 3 points on Bulletstorm for up to 36% bonus damage. Same as the rest of our builds in this video, we are going to use the Elixir of Concentration for the extra 30% bonus critical damage. This build is not something that you can rely on to finish the game with, but it certainly is a build that you can have fun with, especially if you are playing with friends and you have someone to tank your enemies. If you don't play multiplayer though, you can always summon your boar pet to tank your enemies, while you're waiting for the future patch where the crocodile pet and the elite boar will also be released. For the next variation, you can play with the reliable musket and eliminate your enemies from afar. While the maximum damage output will be lower than the shotguns, with the right build you will be able to take down enemies in one shot from very long distances. For this weapon we will max out precision since it scales with S and gain as much damage as possible. The rest of the build will remain the same: marksman gear set for bonus range damage, cutthroat ring for bonus critical damage, and the elixir of concentration. For our talents though, we will have to make a few adjustments. Our goal is to be able to one-shot opponents with a single headshot, so we are going to use Bullseye for 20% bonus damage, Firearm Training for another 10%, and then we want both Sniper Focus and Bulletstorm. Sniper Focus will start stacking up the moment you begin aiming, and the stacks won't fall off until you stop holding your right mouse button, which means that even on its first stack you will have 7% bonus damage and up to 28% total after 8 seconds. In addition, if you manage to land every single shot, Bulletstorm will also stack up, giving you an additional 36% bonus damage. Again, I believe that you will enjoy both of those builds if you somehow spawn unlimited bullets and gunpowder and have a friend tanking in front of you. Don't forget that the final bullets will also give you an additional 30% critical damage boost, pushing your overall DPS off the charts. The next build is something that you all have been waiting for, an actual tanky Halberd build. So for this build we are going to be using the Plague Halberd, a weapon that after 5 successful hits unlock its special attack when you press F, dealing AoE damage around you. The whole idea behind this build is that you will be able to take a few hits and then restore that health back with your special attack. To maximize Plague Halberd's damage output, we are going to use the Warrior's Ring, which will give us 30% bonus damage with our special attack. Since our special attack cannot crit, there is no reason to put attribute points into anything other than strength and vitality. Once again, I'm using Coffee for 20 points in endurance, and with the rest of them I try to reach the hard cap for 50 total strength plus 30 vitality. To do that, I'm using the Croc Meat Kebab plus the Necklace of Vitality. For our gear, in order to gain a bit more damage, I'm going to be using the Pikeman set for a total 15% damage boost. The best elixir that you can use for this build is going to be the Elixir of Firm Hand for 13% bonus melee damage. Now, for our talents, there are 2 ways that you can play it. First, you will need to spend 3 points on extra crude damage and then take Massive for 10% bonus damage. Then you will have 2 options. The first one is to take both Berserk and Dominating Presence and max them out. Berserk will give you 1 stack of extra damage every 15% HP you are currently missing. This works very well with our build since we will be constantly taking and losing HP and then recover it when we cast our special move, so Berserk will boost our special attack very efficiently. Dominating Presence will give you a huge 18% damage boost after killing 1 enemy, which means it's useful mostly during exploration rather than 1 versus 1 situations. The other option is to remove Dominating Presence and go for You Will Answer for This, which gives you 75% additional temporary HP. With this perk you will be able to replenish more lost HP. It is up to you to decide if you find this perk more useful than the 18% bonus damage. The Plague Halberd build will shine mostly in AoE fights when boarding enemy ships and fighting group of enemies stuck together. Other than that, it is definitely fun to play, but it lacks strength on 1 versus 1 combat, since you are unable to perfect block. Being able to heal back tons of HP, however, makes it one of the strongest builds in the game. Finally, we have one of my favorite builds with the signature pirate weapon, the Sabre. This is going to be another critical build and we are going to use the Razor. Razor has S scaling with agility, making it one of the strongest weapons in Windrose. It also has a very fast and very wide basic attack, which makes it very easy to use. Like any other sword, it is able to perfect block attacks and also allow you to equip a pistol as a secondary weapon. For our gear, we will equip pretty much the same items we had on the previous critical builds, the Privateer set, the Jaguar ring and the Elixir of Concentration. Once again, you wanna reach the mid cap of 40 points in agility and then have exactly 20 points in mastery for some bonus critical strike chance. As for your talents, you can adjust them depending on whether you are fighting 1 versus 1 or against multiple enemies. But the core idea is to have surgical cuts for extra critical chance and 3 points on deadly finale. Then you can take deep cuts and quick strikes if you are fighting multiple enemies, or perfect counter and duelist if you are up against a boss. I have a dedicated video explaining more about the Razor build that you can find in the link in the description. Additionally, I know that many of you are thinking, how can I follow a build in Windrose when loot is RNG? For that, I created another video explaining how you can import one of my worlds into your game, which is stacked with unlimited items and also contains every single weapon and armor in the game. That way you can learn all the weapon and armor recipes and you can play the game with the build of your choice. And that's pretty much it, every high tier build in Windrose. If you like this kind of videos, make sure to leave a like and maybe a sub. Thank you all for watching, have fun playing and see you on the next one.